What's up, guys? Gonna do a Theros Beyond Death draft today. I've been playing this format a little bit. I got into it a bit late, though. Probably like a week or two since it got released. But then I've been playing it a ton last week. I was a little bit sick, so I had a lot of time to play Magic. So that was a silver lining, at least. But this format is pretty awesome, and I'm still figuring it out, but I'll try to give some of my thoughts on the format while I'm learning it. It's been really fun so far for me. I've never seen this rare, actually, so it looks pretty good. Wow, how have I not seen this before? Okay, this card is pretty bomby. Just a 4/5 flash flying, and it has a bit of a upside with the ability that makes your other expensive cards cost one less. So I'm gonna take that card and try it out. I haven't played blue a lot, actually, so we'll have to see how that goes. There's some other... I like all these uncommons. They're all really good cards in this pack. So I think Storm's Wrath is an okay card. It's at least a good sideboard card that you can bring in on the draw. And I've had success playing it even in an aggressive deck. And I can bring it in after sideboard against an aggressive opponent and play a bit of a different strategy in that game. But yeah, I don't think Storm's Wrath is a super high pick. I've been impressed with Phalanx Tactics as well. Daybreak Chimera is also just solid. I found that flying is really good in this format. Thirst for Meaning is not high on my list. The card draw spells are like a little slow and they don't affect the board. This is pretty interesting. I'm going to take Storm's Wrath. Blue-red is a archetype, and these two cards go well together because Thrix has 5 toughness, obviously. They could both go in like a... I could play a deck with some instants in it, like a blue-red instant deck, and then that also leads to leaving Storm's Wrath up because you have that optionality to not play your creatures down to the board. So my second pick would have been Daybreak Chimera there. I've actually not played this archetype before. Blue-red, that is. So I'm not... But this Arena Trickster goes in the deck. I'm not sure how good it is, though, just being a vanilla creature that grows. Like, basically, it has to compete with stuff like Voracious Typhon, which is just already a 4/4, and then gets massive later, kind of incidentally. So I don't really like any of the red cards in this pack. So I'm just going to take what I think is the best card, which is Voracious Typhon. So there's some decent white cards in this pack, nothing insane. I think the biggest reason you want to go into white is if you can go wide and get... There's a 5-drop uncommon that gives you a 1/1 for your devotion to white when it enters the battlefield. Usually I try to go into white with that card. I still want to play blue. Obviously, the strongest card I have is blue, but I haven't been past much blue. Cetizen Training has impressed me. It's good with the white cards like Hero of Winds because it's basically a free target because Cetizen Training cantrips and replaces itself. So I think I'll take Cetizen Training. It's good in any green deck. So Madomai's Prophecy is a decent, slow controlling card. I don't think it's anything special. Ichthyomorphosis, same thing. It's like average removal. Triton Wave Rider is an average card, I would say. For any deck is going to be able to trigger the Constellation pretty regularly. So again, I'm seeing these same red commons, which I don't love. I think I'll take a blue card here because everything in this pack is fairly weak. I guess I'll take the decent 2-drop card advantage spell. The other cards I think are a little more replaceable. So here's a blue-red, well, it's a rare. I haven't seen it been good in draft, though. Yeah, I guess it's really just not made for draft. It is a 2/4 for 3. Nyxborn Seaguard. I don't think I could ever be really too happy putting this in my deck unless I have a really strong late game. Loathsome Chimera, I think, is a decent green aggressive card. So I think green is like my second best option of colors to go in right now. There was the aggressive 3/1 red 2-drop in that pack. I think that card is okay too. I'm not sure if I'm going down the aggressive red route. This pack, there's another Deny the Divine. I mean, I think this card is okay, and I'll play it sometimes, but I don't actively want to pick it up early because it's pretty suspect trying to play more than one copy in a deck. Return to Nature is pretty solid. And then the rest of these cards, I actually like Glory Bearers quite a bit in the white deck, just to go along with that same go wide strategy I was mentioning. If you can buff the toughness on those creatures that you make, it actually helps them survive combat to the next turn pretty often, so you can like swing twice with a bunch of creatures. So still seeing more mediocre red cards and blue cards as well. I haven't been super happy with Vexing Gull. I think it's a little bit small for the cost. I think I'm going to take it here, though. I think it's the best of my options. So this is the pack that I opened. And tabling Ichthyomorphosis, I would say, is a decent sign. Blue is the color I want to be in. This is just a pretty weak pack, although I think Aspect of Lamprey is actually a solid card. So maybe black is a little bit open. My experience with the format so far is that black is usually cut because it's like the deepest and the strongest color. So this Thirst for Meaning, I believe it was the only blue card in this pack. So that's a good sign for me trying to be in blue. I'm still not going to take Thirst for Meaning. It's a card where I don't want to play multiples. I actually think this Grove Dancer is decent. It can trigger Constellation. It can get me card advantage by putting cards in my graveyard that I can escape later. And it's just a 2-drop that affects the board. So it's decent early and decent late. So that's all you can ask for from like a common 2-drop in my opinion. And these cards are all pretty weak. Scavenging Harpy is playable. I'll just take the blue card, even though I probably will not play it. I'm going to speculate on the Traveler's Amulet here. I could end up splashing. I don't think Thaumaturge's Familiar is very playable. And Trident Wave Rider tables as well. So I guess this pack was just weak for blue. Blue does seem open. It's kind of confusing to me. I was going to say with the Traveler's Amulet that I've been splashing cards in this format a lot. There's just a lot of really powerful cards that only cost a single color of the colored mana. So there's another blue rare, which is Protean Thaumaturge, which is the Constellation clone. I think it's a pretty strong card. Just it gets to upgrade throughout the game and become whichever card is not only strongest at the time, but that morphs to your situation. Like I have one of my opponents in a match yesterday played it against me, and he used it to like gain some life at one point in the game. He used it to become a big creature to attack at another point. So it can just cover different bases. And I want to play blue, like I mentioned, so I've played with this uncommon Caliphie a little bit. It seems just like pretty average. Let's take the Thaumaturge and see how it goes. There is a bit of a constellation theme in blue-green, and this card, Enigmatic Incarnation, illustrates that. This is like the enchantment birthing pod. I haven't gotten it to work yet. I played against an opponent who had a decent deck with it yesterday. It's a card that I might be looking to wheel out of this pack, but I don't really think I can take it right now. I still honestly do not know what colors I'm playing. I'm still trying to like read the draft and see what's open. Green did seem open last pack, and I like green as a color. The option here is Nylea's Huntmaster, which does not exactly go in this deck that I'm building right now. So I'm just going to take the Vexing Gull, actually. So here's some more of the stronger black cards, like Blight Breath, Catopopos, Mogi's Favor. I don't see myself going into black at this point. I feel like it was cut in the first pack. But there's some more good green options. I've already talked about each of these 3 green commons. And yeah, I like all of them. For the deck I'm building, the most... I think Typhon is just the most strong of these options, although certain decks will want Setessan Training more, the more aggressive decks. The deck I'm building, I'm not sure if it is going to be super aggressive. I think I might be trying to go a little bit bigger with this deck. Threnody Singer, no idea how to say that. This card is great, so I'll pretty happily just take that. Still seeing, I feel like I could have gone down the red route this draft, but I just didn't. Even though Thrix, the blue card I started with, I guess you could put it in a aggressive deck, but I'm not sure if it's maximized there. So Pharika's Spawn is a great black card. It's better in the slower matchups, though. It's actually not going to be great against a white deck. I don't think it's like strong enough for me to want to splash it, though. I can already escape these Typhons, which become 7/7s. Those are pretty good, too. So I actually like the Binding of Titans quite a bit, even though it's like slow and all it really does is like mill you, gain you like 1 or 2 life, and then get a creature card from your graveyard. I find that all the synergies are worth it. Like it triggers Constellation, it feeds your escape cards, and it disrupts your opponent's escape cards. And then in the end, it turns itself into the best card from your graveyard, so that you're not down on card advantage. I think it's just like a pretty solid slow card. So I've been seeing black this pack. Not sure if I should have been in those colors, but here I'll just take Return to Nature. I probably won't want to play 2 main deck, but that card is just really good in certain matchups. Yeah, so in the first pack, I tabled that aspect of Lamprey from the first pack, and that's what I mentioned about black possibly being open, and I guess that is what I've seen here. So I could have moved in on that. If black is ever open, you're just going to end up with a really good deck because of how good black is. Like, seeing Timurit this late, this is 7th pick, that's crazy. Timurit is just so good. But I think I'm pretty, like, committed to where I'm at now. I think this Mirror Shield card is actually playable in certain matchups. Definitely would not main deck it ever. I'll just take Ichthyomorphosis. Decent card. I don't actually have that many enchantments in my deck. It looks like I have 4 or 5. So I think this turtle will be good in some matchups. Devourer of Memory is a great card, and it would have been good in my deck. I feel like it's a little bit late to go into black. I tabled the Enigmatic Incarnation. I don't think I'm going to be able to use it. Stern Dismissal is certainly a good sideboard card against all the aura decks. It's possible that I didn't really have a great reason to go into green this draft. So this rare is mostly a removal spell. I don't really think it's going to be worth splashing. I have a chance to take another Midoma's Prophecy for some slow card advantage, which I already kind of have with my first copy, and also the Binding of Titans is a pretty similar card. I feel like I don't want to have too much of that. Nylea's Forerunner is decent. It's good with my 2 Voracious Typhons. I think Forerunner is actually just pretty strong in the aggressive decks. I'm not sure exactly how aggressive my deck is. Like, I have these flyers in the deck. Forerunner is not exactly good with those. But I think it's the best card I can take from this pack. I don't really like Naiad of Hidden Coves. So here's Faeries Band Brawler, which is just a strong card that can get a 2-for-1. Any sort of card advantage I think is good in this format. There's not too much of it, honestly. This is a pretty easy pick. Here's another Loathsome Chimera, which is okay with my Nylea's Forerunner. Chimera is just a decent card. Like, it's a good blocker, actually, but opponents are easily able to block it as well. I already have plenty of escape, so it's not a huge plus for me to add another escape card to my deck. But the other options are sideboard cards of Plummet and Soul Guide Lantern, so I'll just take the Chimera. Oh, Neshin Wanderer, I'm pretty happy to get this card. This card just gives massive amounts of card advantage, just giving you a land almost every time you play an enchantment. And it's a 1/3 2-drop, which blocks a few things. That's just a great card, in my opinion. And I'll be able to use the extra lands in this deck. I have not a super high curve, but I have a 6-drop, 3 5-drops, and I have these Typhons that I'm trying to get up to 7 mana for. I don't have great ways to fuel my graveyard right now. I do have the 2 Skull of Grove Dancers. So I can take another Grove Dancer here. That might be starting to take too many, but I don't like the other options. Witness of Tomorrows is a pretty decent card. It's good in some matchups. It's bad in the matchups where your opponents have like multiple Return to Natures, or the white one that does the same thing. I'm forgetting the card name. You're just losing a lot of tempo there. Wolf Willow Haven seems decent. I have a lot of cards to ramp into at the 4, 5, and 6 slot, and it's an enchantment. I don't have a ton of enchantment payoff, but I just like this card in my deck to be able to get me to my big 4/4s and so on later in my curve. So I actually don't have access to any counter spells at the moment. So I think I'll take my first one. These Vexing Goals, I'm not sure how good they're going to be in my deck. So I don't really have many instants to use with Naiad of the Hidden Coves still. Should I just play it as a 2/3 enchantment creature? Doesn't seem great. Or I can take Relentless Pursuit, which is card advantage for the slow matchups. I have a lot of 2-drops, so I don't feel like I need to take the turtle. I actually do like this Triton Wave Rider because it's a decent way to get through damage in the late game. I do like flyers, so I think I could play this card actually. And Glimpse of Freedom, I haven't played with it a ton, but I don't think I want to be escaping to draw a card with my deck. I think that's not a good use of my graveyard when I have 2 Voracious Typhons. I'll take the Plummet. I think Wings of Hubris is a totally playable sideboard card, but I don't think my deck needs it. I'm not a Chariot deck. I don't love this card. I think it gets blocked on the ground too easily. And so I have a choice between these 2 cards, which are quite similar. I'll take the Elite Instructor. Here I have a chance to take a large ground creature. I don't think I need it. I think I have enough top end. I can just play... I'm probably not playing all of these 5-drops that are currently in my deck, but I think I have enough top end of the curve, and there are certainly some white decks where I'll want to have 2 plummets. This deck worked out okay. I guess the blue side of my deck is like quite weak, and I'm mostly in this color just based off the strong first pick that I had. And it turns out that blue-black was very open in that draft. I could have had a pretty solid blue-black deck. I feel like my green cards are quite strong, though. So I think I'm okay with how this went. I need to make a lot of cuts here, so let's see what we could do. I have a lot of options. That's a good start to like trimming the deck down, like just taking a few cards out of each part of the curve, a few of the weaker cards. And I don't mind having like the split of 1 Witness of Tomorrow's, 1 Nylea's Forerunner. The Forerunner is actually quite good with some of my big ground creatures. And then the Witness of Tomorrow's is just better on its own as a flyer. Elite Instructor is just a bit of a low impact card, so I don't think I need it. I have 6 2-drops right now and a Wolf Willow Haven. I think, yeah, I want to play 17 lands in this deck, plus the Haven. I think that's fine. I'm not really going to flood. I have some mana sinks. I have Witness of Tomorrow's. I have the Escape cards. And I have Grove Dancer. I think playing 1 Return to Nature main seems good. It just pretty much always has a target, and it's instant speed, only costs 2 mana. It's just a really great card. I mean, I should maybe even be playing 2. I actually am not sure about that. I'll just start with 1 in the deck, though. I like Setessan Training in the deck for the same reason I said about Nylea's Forerunner. So the card I'm looking to cut from this deck is a 2-drop. I think I just don't need to have so many 2-drops, which are going to be weaker in the late game. And I think it's pretty obvious I can cut one of these Grove Dancers. The third one is just not going to be as good as the first 2. Obviously, once you get a second one in play, it effectively has no ability on it. At least no activated ability, that is. So this deck, this looks okay. And we'll try to run this. I'm recommending 10-7, which seems okay. Actually seems a little bit favored towards green. It is really important to hit double green on turn 4 for Voracious Typhon. I do have a double blue card as well. I think I want one more island. Seems pretty close, but we'll go with this. I also have the Wolf Willow Haven, which if I'm ever able to play that card, I'll have double green. This hand looks fine. It's going to be rough if I draw another island, but this is really all you could ask for, not flooding out and having some semblance of a curve. We'll see how this deck plays out. I feel like it has like a medium power level, not a ton of synergy. But I feel like it's going to have game against most decks. Like I think I have game against aggro decks, and I think I can like get card advantage against the slower decks too. Although I don't have, there are certain slower controlling decks that once they get to the late game, they're just doing something that's so much better than what an average deck can do. And I cannot compete with those decks, I'll say. And the type of decks I'm talking about are ones that have like Kiora bests the Sea God or Dream Trawler are the usual suspects. So my opponent could have the 3-mana counterspell here. They could counter anything I play, enchantment or creature. I'm just going to get on the board. No matter what I do, my opponent's probably going to have some blockers. Or they'll have access to a blocker next turn, but playing this rather than the 2-drop is also mana efficient. So, and I can also save the Prophecy for later and get the Constellation trigger off of my Triton Wave Rider. So yeah, my draw is a little bit weird, or it's a little bit awkward right now with all these islands. So it's interesting when the opponent gets Pharika Spawn into play. I'm probably just going to want to leave that on the battlefield. There's no reason to trade, put it right into my opponent's graveyard where they want it. So I'll try to limit their options. I'll try to leave it on the battlefield as long as it's not getting value in another way by either dealing me damage or something. I currently cannot cast any cards in my hand besides Prophecy, so it's going to be a little bit awkward in Act 2 of it when I have to choose a card name, because right now I can't really choose one. But I'm going to get to Scry 2, so I mean it's probably not going to be a problem. So I'll start by casting that. Opponent is leaving 5 mana up. Okay, yeah, that is fine. My opponent put 2 cards on top, so I can still trigger Constellation. Still with the same plan of not attacking with Chimera. I'm not in a rush to trade. Okay, I've drawn a forest. Opponent is still keeping mana up. So I'm not gonna, I mean, slamming this Theros Band Brawler would be really good here, but what are the chances of that actually working? My opponent having no counter spell, no bounce spell, or no removal spell? Probably pretty low. We are getting to the point where this Pharika Spawn is now holding back all of my team, which is not great. But my opponent is also at the point where they're going to have 3 cards in their graveyard. They will be able to escape it if they want to. So I'm just going to cast Typhon here and see what happens. So my opponent has plenty of graveyard fuel now. So they have 2 counter spells. So I can get the Constellation trigger here. My opponent only has 3 mana up. They do have Soul Reaper of Mogus up, so I'm not exactly going to get value off of the fighting. So I'm going to go with using Wolf Willow Haven here. It's possible my opponent will just sacrifice their Pharika's Spawn at the end of turn just in order to get it into their graveyard. I guess it doesn't seem super likely. But we're set up to play a pretty long game here, which I do think I have the tools to compete in. I have the Grove Dancer, although I'll possibly be losing that card eventually to sacrifice it, but if I can use it to put some cards in my graveyard, if my opponent's not pressuring me, that can lead to some card advantage with these 2 escape cards I have on the battlefield. I'm also getting damage in every time I draw an enchantment. So, and my opponent does sacrifice the Pharika's Spawn. So I'm just going to have to start grinding through whatever they're doing with their graveyard. So on my turn, I'm going to be able to fight their Soul Reaper of Mogus. And here, I think I'll actually just sacrifice my Typhon because I would like to escape it eventually. Basically, the Typhon wasn't doing anything on the battlefield. You know, it could help me block the Pharika Spawn, but this game is such that my opponent is not able to attack me anyways. So I'll just get it in the graveyard, ready to become a 7/7, which can hopefully attack profitably at some point. It's going to take me a couple turns to get the cards in my graveyard using the Grove Dancer, but that's fine. My opponent does have 4 cards in hand, and they have access to Scry 2 with Omen of the Sea. They already have 2 cards in their graveyard, so they're going to be able to escape Pharika Spawn again in the future. So we both have a good amount of card advantage going on right now, but they're eventually going to have to answer my Triton Wave Rider. I'll just play out my land, given the existence of Curse of the Lamprey, or whatever that card is called, the Mind Rot that gives enchanted creature lifelink. I would like to have all my lands in play this game, activate Grove Dancer as many times as I can. So I've just had my 7/7 exiled, which is perhaps a reason to not have put it in my graveyard so early. But I still have another one in my deck. I think I'll take the opportunity to make my wolf token, planning to hold on to it for later in the game. At which point I can sacrifice it to Pharika Spawn, which I'm probably going to have to deal with the Pharika Spawn escaping at least one more time in this game. One of my ways to attack through it is to use Ichthyomorphosis on it, turn it into a 0/1 with 2 counters on it. I don't have great ways to deal with that card. I do have a few flyers in my deck. So really not much I can do right now. I'll just keep milling myself with Grove Dancer. My opponent is seeing a good amount of their deck. We'll see like how high the power level is in their deck. They scryed 2 cards to the top again. Now they are returning, they're using Omen of the Dead to return the 2/3 that can sacrifice cards. Not too worried about that. Oh, when did that get in the graveyard? I must have missed that. Oh, they discarded it with their Shoal Kraken. Okay. Well, there's not really too much I can do right now. Let's see. Yeah, my opponent has a pretty good Freakus Spawn deck. They have lots of ways to get cards into their graveyard. And I'm just going to have to trade with it. I can't just let it continue to attack me. So I'm down pretty big on cards right now. I still suppose we'll see how much removal is in my opponent's deck, because I do have flyers in my deck. I'm gonna be saving this Ichthyomorphosis. It seems like triggering Constellation is like pretty important for me to win this game. Going to be taking some damage this turn. And there is the aspect of the Lamprey. Going to have to keep that in mind for next game. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to trade here. I'm going to need to check if my opponent has played a land. So my opponent has access to 5 lands right now. They've not played a land this turn, so that means they can bring back their Freakus Spawn. So I think I'm just taking this damage this turn. I don't want to trade both of my creatures away and then have my opponent escape another Freakus Spawn. Then I'll basically lose my entire board. I mean, the game is looking pretty bad for me anyways. The fact they have this 2/1 lifelink is a bit of a problem. They're playing a lot of Omens in their deck. It would be nice if I had a mill plan in my sideboard, because I could see myself winning this matchup through mill. So that's the 3rd counterspell that I've seen from my opponent. So I'll be able to play around those pretty well in the next game. Although they do have other instants. It's possible I can win this game still by decking my opponent. Maybe I can run them out of cards that are useful. I'm dying pretty quickly right now, though. Yeah, I think I'm probably just going to be dead next turn at this point. I'm going to 3. I have 9 mana. I can put 2 creatures into play. I'll pretty much just be chump blocking with all of them. So this isn't exactly going to work out. I can block like this. Yeah, I'm pretty much dead. So I know how to play against my opponent's deck a lot better now for the next 2 games. But I don't exactly have... I don't love my matchup. I'm going to bring in Witness of Tomorrows. Most likely. Let's see. I need to keep in mind that my opponent has all of those counter spells in their deck. The Vexing goals actually look pretty decent. Like, my opponent will have to use their removal to kill these. They're also instant speed, so I can play around their counter spells a little bit. Let's see. So I kind of like the flyers versus the ground creatures, because one way I can get an advantage is just to ignore my opponent's 2 escape creatures rather than attacking through them and trading and then letting my opponent escape them. So one way to do that is just play more flyers. So I'll bring in the Witness of Tomorrows and the Vexing Goal. Cards I'll take out. Return to Nature looked pretty poor that matchup. Really did not have great targets. I'll take that out. This deck looks okay. I'm also thinking of bringing in this counter spell. Although, yeah, I don't love the counter spell. Ichthyomorphosis is also not looking great in this matchup. Maybe I don't even need to play it. Maybe I would rather have Relentless Pursuit just for the card advantage. So let's try that. Like, turning my opponent's creatures into 0/1s, and then they can just escape them anyways. They've already gotten their value off of them. Removing them isn't going to exactly help. So this hand is pretty awkward, and I think I'll have to mulligan. This hand is almost really good, but I think there's too big of a chance that I just don't hit a forest. So this hand looks fine. It has some strong cards in it, which is good. Maybe that's one way I can win this game, is just draw the stronger part of my deck. So I don't need all these forests. So with my opponent having at least 3 counter spells in their deck, this text on Thrix is actually pretty important, where my expensive cards can't be countered. So just getting that card on the battlefield is going to be really important, and I should probably be able to do it too, because my opponent usually utilizes their mana at the end of my turn. So I see this card as being really strong in the matchup. And maybe I should even bring in another 5-drop, because it's going to be uncounterable, but that's probably not important. So this hand could be pretty good. I'm going to get Triton Wave Rider down, and then later I'll be able to, let's see, I won't be able to get both triggers on the Protean Thaumaturge right away, but I'll be able to turn it into a Triton Wave Rider. That'll be decent. And I can possibly race my opponent. So my opponent is holding up the 3-mana counterspell right now. So I can either play the Grove Dancer or I can just pass. I think just, let's see. Yeah, my opponent doesn't have a ton of removal for Thrix, honestly. I only saw Mire's Grasp, so like they can Mire's Grasp my Thrix if they want to. I'm just going to leave it up and try to get it into play. I'm trying to think if I saw other removal, but I don't feel like I did. My opponent put 2 cards on the top of their library with the Scry. So they will Mire's Grasp. Do they have double Mire's Grasp? Okay, so they're still holding up the counterspell. I'm going to play the Grove Dancer. I think it's fine if they counter this. I would like to play around my opponent's counters as much as possible, but getting them to counter a 2/2, it seems fine to me. My opponent could start getting aggressive here, but they're not. So Ichthyomorphosis is looking pretty bad again. It kind of does not much against my opponent's board. I will save it for maybe a flyer later or something. And I have 6 mana in play, so I don't exactly need to play this forest, although I could. So my opponent has gotten one of their Freakus spawns into their graveyard. Yeah, it would be nice if I had some sort of graveyard disruption. So I will be able to at least shrink down the Freakus spawn. So should I sacrifice my 1/2 flyer? That's going to help me in the late game. Or my 3/3. That was a pretty close decision, but so I can get in some damage here with the Ichthyomorphosis. I think I would rather just resolve this Ferris Band Brawler. So I can't really do anything against this Freakus spawn. I kind of just have to take the damage. That's a good target for Ichthyomorphosis. This is a pretty good reason to put my forest into play, and I'll just start getting aggressive now. Let's see. I don't even want to trade 4 damage for 2 damage with my Ferris Band Brawler. Yeah, the Freaka spawn is looking really good in this matchup. It's not always this powerful. Like against the aggro decks, it's not so powerful, but I just have no way to disrupt it or to have a cheap creature to sacrifice. So one way would be to have one of my 7/7s in play to block it, but I'm just like a little bit too slow in this race. Not exactly sure how I'm going to get out of this game, actually. I mean, theoretically, I can just race with my flyers, but it's going to depend on my opponent really not having much more. Double blocking the Freaka spawn is just really not a thing I can do. It will basically just 2-for-1 me. So I have to take it here, and then I can have some sort of plan for chump blocking it. Opponent is getting back their Brine Giant. So yeah, I need to win with my flyers, but at the same time, I'm just dying on the ground. My opponent has all of these lethal creatures, so I think I'm pretty much dead on board right now. Not a bad card to draw. I guess I will play it and see what happens. Need my opponent to have no removal. Gonna be chumping 2 of my creatures. If I'm able to get Voracious Typhon into play, then that's going to be good. So I think I'll be chumping here and then trading here. So I'm going to need my opponent to have no counterspell in hand. Oh, okay, they can remove my Typhon anyways. So that's probably going to do it. That was one of the ways I could make the game go long, is by putting a 7/7 into play. But now, yeah, I'm just dead on board. So the deck looked pretty poor in that matchup. I never really felt like I had a chance in either of those games. And I pretty much single-handedly lost to the black uncommon that escapes. So we'll see how we can do in the next match. Okay, let's play another round with this deck. I'm gonna mulligan with 5 lands. And this hand looks fine. Going to get rid of Triton Wave Rider. I think I want to get rid of something high on the curve. And this is the weaker card. We'll see if we can make this clone do some work. Maybe I can turn it into a 4/4 on turn 5 if I draw land. My opponent's scrying 2 cards to the bottom and getting aggressive attacking me, which is fine. Their Eidolon is looking pretty good as a blocker right now. My opponent has chosen War Briar Blessing. So that's actually a pretty good one to know about. So I'm just gonna play this and clone something. So I can clone my opponent's creature too, right? Yeah, okay. So what should I turn it into? Probably just a 4/1. That seems fine. Now if my opponent wants to play Warbriar Blessing and draw 2 cards, which they're kind of priced into, they kind of need to draw those 2 cards. They're just going to have to kill my Grove Dancer. And I'm not going to play the other Grove Dancer. I'm going to save it to trigger my clone later. Actually, no, the Blessing still works to kill this Chimera, actually. So I didn't exactly think that through. My opponent can use it on their tapped creature right now and make it 2/5. So I don't love this play in hindsight. I was supposed to turn my creature into something with more toughness, but I guess it's not, doesn't matter too much because my opponent kind of wants to trade the reflection away anyways, because it's a bit of a free roll. Now they get to untap the original creature. So I'm okay with trading now. I've been leaving this Chimera on the battlefield because of Farika's Libation, the card that makes you sacrifice a creature, but now I'm fine putting it in my graveyard. My opponent is playing Sultai. I guess it looks like they're splashing black. So I'm willing to trade my Typhon here. And I'll put my other Grove Dancer into play because now my opponent doesn't really have good attacks. Although I do want to start activating its ability and get it to the point where I can escape one of these creatures. So opponent has left a lot of mana up, but I'm going to keep attacking. I'm not going to play my Thrix, which was certainly a good draw. I'm not going to play that into all of their mana. They have 5 cards now in hand. Fairly suspicious that they didn't play anything there. I guess they're pretty flooded here. Still not going to play into their mana. I'm happy to continue. I'm getting a bit of card advantage right now, and I'm also basically ahead on board because I'm actively getting this damage through. So the impetus is on my opponent to make a move here. I mean, I guess they're pretty flooded. Still unsure of what they're playing that's black, but yeah, same thing here. Gonna keep using my Grove Dancers. Opponent is going to go to 1, so I have 3 lethal creatures on the battlefield and a flash one in my hand, so okay, that will be able to trade now. There's a Typhon of their own that they'll be able to possibly tap out for next turn. Let's see, my opponent has 2 cards in hand, so yeah, I guess they have just been pretty flooded. And it looks like they're tapping out. No? Okay. So I'm going to count my opponent's mana. They have 10 mana. So even if they get this 7/7 into play next turn, it's still possible that they can keep up a counterspell. So I'm just trying to decide like how far ahead am I right now. I think it's gotten to the point where I can just fire this Thrix off, and if they have a counterspell, that's okay. So they did just have a lot of mana in hand. Kind of interesting. So my Return to Nature does seem playable. My flyers seem good. I think the deck, yeah, I think the main deck looks good. Okay, game 2. Let's see how this goes. Opponent seems to be playing like a slower Sultai deck. So I didn't see a ton of removal from my opponent. Pretty interesting. I'm going to play the Wolf Willow Haven. This will give me more time to think about the Madomai's Prophecy. I don't exactly want to like cast this card and then call Thrix with it and allow my opponent to like keep up a counterspell or something. And this is also nice that now I just got to backdoor into drawing this Typhon, which that was a small consideration. It's really nice if I draw a 4-drop. So I'm gonna attack. I think I'm okay with trading. My opponent might be able to get to their escape quicker than me because they have some of those black mill cards, but there's a chance that they did not block there, and then maybe I would have gotten to ambush it with my Thrix. I think the chance of that happening is probably pretty low, but I still wanted to give myself the chance for it. So now they're going to get value here with this Acolyte of Affliction, but that's okay. So Whirlwind of Denial. So they do have this counterspell in their deck. And they returned the Saga. So that Saga is going to allow them to exile my Typhon, so that's not great. Put these forests on the bottom. So actually, my opponent has now fueled the escape on my Typhon before they're able to exile it, because I will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I will have 7 mana next turn. So that's pretty bad for my opponent. They have Eutropia. Okay, never mind. I thought that was the mythic blue-green escape card. Okay, so my opponent is casting Elspeth's Nightmare. They're only going to get the duress half off of it. So I might actually be whiffing on this Medomai's Prophecy, which is not great. So whichever card I call here, my opponent will have to take with Elspeth's Nightmare. So I could return to nature the Elspeth's Nightmare right now. Let's see, I can also just return to nature. Let's see. I can return to nature the Binding of the Titans, but then the Elspeth's Nightmare will go off, and I will still... No. I can return to nature the Binding of the Titans. My opponent will Elspeth's Nightmare, take my Ichthyomorphosis. With my Prophecy, I call Voracious Typhon, and I will most likely be able to cast it next turn. Or I just get a 7/7 into play right now, which kind of dominates the battlefield, and that's just really good. I'll go with this play. This is the less aggressive route, but we'll see if it pays off in the end. I also, in this way, I stopped my opponent from returning a creature to their hand. With the return to nature, that's pretty good. So just cast this. Oh wow, this actually costs 4 cards. I couldn't even use it last turn. I'm tripping out right now. So that was clearly the best play that I ended up making. Takes 4 cards to escape the Typhon. I guess my opponent has some blue cards in hand. This play was pretty loose. I could have just given my my creatures both trample, but decided to not deal almost lethal. I think this game is like basically over, but yeah, that was really bad. Okay, we'll play the last round, see how it goes. No island in this hand. These three cards do all go well together with Constellation. I'm on the play here. I think I can afford to stumble a little bit with this hand. Later in the game, I can double spell with Thaumaturge and Septessan training. I think the hand is just good. If I can draw an island, obviously. Being on the play gives me a little bit of extra time. That was a close one, honestly. Another blue-black deck. So I feel like we had a pretty bad matchup last time. See how it goes this time. I can take a pretty aggressive line next turn, copying the Chimera. We'll see what my opponent has. Piper is pretty good. Nesh and Wander is a good draw. This seems worth it to just fire off the training here. I'm going to use Protean Thaumaturge to just turn into another Nesh and Wanderer, and we'll see if we can like go pretty long in this game, try to get a lot of lands out of my deck. Pretty flooded at the moment. I think it was okay to burn the Septessan training there. Later in the game, it might not resolve. So pretty flooded, and I don't really have a good way to profit off of all these extra lands I'm getting from my Nesh and Wanderers. I think it makes sense to... No, I'm just gonna keep my Nesh and Wanderer. Bricked, and we were putting those cards on the bottom. Good to know about. And yeah, I'm not gonna... I don't think I need a 3/3 right now. 3/3 Death Touch. It's possible I could come to regret that in a few turns, but my opponent's not attacking me right now. I'm not going to be attacking them. So I'll just keep trying to get card advantage. So my opponent using their Glimpse of Freedom to clear out their graveyard. They definitely have a lot of card advantage. And two of my big escape cards are on the bottom of my library. I have Loathsome Chimera in my graveyard, so I can escape him soon. Okay, never mind. This Harpy is getting me pretty good this draft. Still not sure how good Harpy is. I think it's just like a pretty solid playable black card that you kind of play most of the time. You probably sideboard it against escape decks, and it's solid. Because, yeah, being a flyer is actually pretty useful. So I guess I'll attack here. I'm not going to attack with my Grove Dancer. One way I can get some value this game is ambushing that Scavenging Harpy, so I'm going to try to do that. My opponent was holding up 3 mana there for one of the counter spells of the format, so I'm pretty far behind this game. I feel like I'm pretty far behind. So, okay. Yeah, it's a good thing I kept 2 lands in my hand. I didn't really have the option to play all of them out, but still, always need to be playing around Aspect of Lamprey. Okay, well, let's see if we get this through. This is probably going to decide the game. If this resolves and gets to block, I'm going to eat a creature and have a massive flyer on the battlefield. My opponent hasn't really had the chance to use much removal this game, though. I've just had these dorky little creatures, so reasonable chance my opponent can remove my 4/5, but still pretty happy getting the ambush in there. Opponent looks like they don't have the counterspell. Threnody Singer, I guess I'll hold on to this so that I can attack everything into the Venomous Hierophant. Okay, my opponent's doing a decent job of trying to stabilize. Now I'll probably try to save this Singer until I can have a creature that will actually trade with the Hierophant, which I currently don't have. So I'll start milling myself. Loathsome Chimera, that's probably the only escape creature I can hope to get into my graveyard, actually. This is pretty great, getting this card into play. I can clone it, and having 2 of those, one of them which gets to attack right away. I could be paying attention to the cards in my library as well, but I have forgotten where exactly the cards I put on bottom are. I'm gonna not play around a second Aspect of Lamprey. We'll see how that works out for me. I feel like I'm getting close to the 7/7s that are in my deck. Maybe they're like 4 or 5 cards down. Okay, so opponent played like a similar blue-black grindy strategy to what we played in round 1, but they just didn't have the card advantage of my first opponent. So my deck performed really well there, actually. So how do I want to sideboard now? I did not see any counter spells. There was the rare black removal spell. I could bring in Starlit Mantle, but I'm thinking the deck is just good as it is. I could take out Nylea's Forerunner. My opponent has at least the 1 Death Touch creature. So again, a spot where the flyers look good. So let's try that. Vexing Goal would probably be decent too, but what would I be taking out? Ichthyomorphosis is good against the Death Touchers. Did I see a target for nature, Return to Nature? I think I should probably take this card out. I guess it's not at its best in the blue-black matchup usually. So we'll bring in the Vexing Gull. This is a risky keep, but if I draw lands, this hand is great. And if I even draw one land, I can cast 2 cards. Who knows? I'm on the draw. It seems worth a keep. Another 3-drop that can block really well. Not necessarily a bad draw that can help bridge me to the late game. And I'm not sure if I am supposed to put this Threnody Singer into play. Or should I be keeping it for the late game? I feel like I don't need it. I'll at least leave myself the option till end of turn. See what my opponent plays. They don't play anything. Okay. So I'm just going to put Vexing Gull into play. Opponent puts 2 cards on bottom. It may have been a little greedy to not play out my 1/3, given I don't even have a ton of devotion to blue right now. I need to get 3 devotion into play if I want to stop the 3/3 death touch. But just playing against blue-black, I feel like there's a good chance this game's going to go long. I want to get as much value as I possibly can. So that's a bit of a problem, although I can fight it eventually. So we'll let my opponent get a little bit of value, bouncing their Omen of the Sea. There's the Hierophant. So I can Ichthyomorphosis the Shimmerwing Chimera. That will make it lose all of its abilities. And yeah, this play actually just seems too good to pass up on. It's going to give me 3 devotion so that I can kill the Venomous Hierophant while my opponent is more or less tapped out. So I'm going to try to get aggressive here. I just realized a problem with my plan. My opponent can sacrifice the Shimmerwing Chimera in response and lower my devotion to blue, so not loving this play. So wasn't able to exactly do what I wanted, but I still took care of the Chimera, which is something I wanted to do in the next few turns. I don't want my opponent to be able to replay their Omen of the Sea too many times, but I haven't really maximized my value because I spewed off this Threnody Singer. So my opponent's going to try to race me with their Underworld Charger. So will my opponent be able to race? I do have some flyers. I can use this Chimera to chump block, and then I can bring it back and then block for real. Kind of interesting. Interesting spot. I have a few options here. I can Chimera plus put Setessan Training on it and then block. I can just play out a 3/4 flyer. The question is, like, how am I going to deal with this Underworld Charger? I don't think I want to put the Witness of Tomorrows down. Let's see. The Chimera doesn't do a ton, although it can be decent if I get to fight away one of my opponent's blockers. Opponent has one card in their graveyard. I don't think they're going to be able to effectively... I think I want to just block right away, actually. I don't think my opponent can effectively bring back their Charger again in this game. At that point, they're probably going to be dying to my flyers too quickly. And I'd rather just block with the Setessan Training than put it on one of my flyers, do a few more damage. This way also, if my Chimera dies, the Setessan Training goes to the graveyard. That fuels the escape right away. So I like this play the best. Also, I could also just not block here, and then I have a 5/1 trample. Okay, so they exile the creature. That's pretty good. So we have a legit race at this point. I'm kind of far away from getting the Typhon down, but also kind of not. So I get to fight a creature here, and I think I'll fight the Lampad. Seems good to get rid of their sacrifice outlet. It's gonna save me a few points of damage over the course of this game. That seems good. And then maybe I can double spell next turn. I know my opponent has Omen of the Sea in hand. I think I want to play a long game. So I'm going to go for the double block on my opponent's Underworld Charger. It could go wrong, but I'm okay with that. I like how I'm set up for the late game. Like, I have the Binding of Titans in hand. I have a Voracious Typhon in my graveyard. The fact that I just got hit with Agonizing Remorse is obviously hurts my chances a little bit. But yeah, I still think I have to just try to like grind through this Underworld Charger. I don't like just taking the damage. So I'm getting to the point where I can definitely get this Typhon into play. We'll see if I'm able to fade my opponent removing it from my graveyard. See if we can bink a 5/2 here. No, we cannot. I'll put my land into play. And I'll attack for 2. Opponent puts 1 card on top, 1 on bottom. Venomous Hierophant is a pretty good hit for my opponent. Gonna get to exile 2 cards from their graveyard. I'll get to gain 1 life. I could have exiled a creature from my graveyard, gain 1 more life. So as long as my opponent doesn't have removal, I'm in an okay position here. Forest, Ichthyomorphosis, Cetizen Training. This I get to raise dead one of these creatures next turn. We'll see how that goes. I'm at 8 life. I think I keep attacking with the Vexing Goal. Leave back the 1/3. If my opponent removes my 7/7, I'm like pretty dead here though. Trying to remember all the removal I've seen from my opponent. I know they have the one final death that they've already used this game. My Typhon is not looking amazing this game, besides as a blocker, because of the Discordant Piper on my opponent's side of the field. Like, it can just block my Typhon twice. That's almost enough to finish the game out. This game is going to last probably 3 or 4 more turns. Yeah, the Charger is actually being very effective against me. I think my best bet is just to like chump it for the rest of the game. So I'm going to trade with the Hierophant here. My opponent's at 9. I guess it's going to be close. We'll see if I can get this chump plan underway. So I'm going to return the fight card. I can get some value off of that. Let's see if the fighting works. I'll fight the 2/3. Keep attacking with the Vexing Goal. Should I hit with the Singer? Just like, how aggressive do I want to be? Let's see. I have 3 cards in my graveyard. Yeah, I don't think I need to attack with the Singer. Opponent scrying on their upkeep. Pretty close game here. Vexing Goal doing some work. My opponent pretty much has access to infinite Underworld Chargers. They have 9 cards in their graveyard. So they're really constrained on mana this game. They're not constrained on graveyard fuel. I also have to remember this Charger cannot block, but they still have this Discordant Piper. So my opponent put 1 card on top. I'm going to pretty much be priced into double blocking here. Let's see if my opponent attacks with only the Charger. So we'll double block just to tie up their mana if we can. See if we can avoid being blown out here. I assume my opponent will just be replaying the Charger. I'm feeling okay if I can draw a spell on my turn. Oh, they actually don't even have a land either. Okay. So they have 2 spells in hand. Wow. Well, I'll start by scrying. This is kind of illustrating the weakness of this Midomai's Prophecy. It's pretty bad in the late game. So Wolf Willow Haven. Next turn I can play the Haven and I can sacrifice it. And then, yeah, that seems better than a random card actually. It's not great, but I think it does what I need it to do. My opponent does have 2 spells in hand, which, like, not sure what those would be. It feels like it's not removal or bounce because they let my double block get through, but I'm just going to keep attacking. I don't feel like I am in such a safe position where I can just pass. I kept the enchantment on top of my library because it's going to fuel my graveyard while also providing a creature. So this is not great. I'm going to call Voracious Typhon. So I'm in a pretty rough spot now. I'm basically going to have to chump twice. My opponent is at 5. Well, this is a funny position. I'm going to cast this Voracious Typhon from my hand. I think this probably gives me the most outs. I would like to draw a removal spell. I have 1 Ichthyomorphosis in my deck. I think that's a way that I can win this game. So let's try it this way. 4/4 or 7/7 is kind of the same. I mean, it looks like my opponent has a counterspell. Let's see. They have 8 mana. They decided to not cast Underworld Charger, so let's play the Grove Dancer, see if it resolves. So, yeah, let's see if I can gain a life. I do not gain a life. Okay, so forced to be chumping again, and I'm going to attack. I'm not feeling great just because my opponent's left all this mana up. Oh, this is the removal spell? Okay. Yeah, I probably could have guessed that. Wasn't feeling great there. But okay, we get to go to game 3. I know more of my opponent's deck now. They have Memory Drain. They have a couple of big enchantments. And 1 small enchantment. So I like having the 2 Witness of Tomorrows in my deck. Still like those. I think I should bring back in the Return to Nature. Just destroying their Witness of Tomorrows with it is going to be pretty good. The card I would take out would be Vexing Gull, which the Gull has been solid for me though. I really don't know what to take out here. Yeah, maybe Wolf Willowhaven is just weak, so when I'm playing a long grindy matchup, it's going to be good to have less mana sources in my deck, or at least it's going to be good for me to not flood out, is what I'll say. So not sure about that sideboarding, but I feel okay with it. So definitely, you You don't usually want to just fire off Binding of Titans. I'll wait till later to make sure that I can hit with it. We're going to leave the Singer in my hand again, see if we can use it correctly this game. It's going to go well with the Chimera. Opponent's giving me the chance to trade here. I think it seems okay, actually. I'm going to want this Devourer to be off the battlefield at some point. The longer the game goes, the better this Devourer is going to get. And it's not like I really had much chance of... I guess given the fact my opponent played a 1-3, I could have attacked my 4-1 through it with the Singer, but this is a pretty good chance to get my 3-4 down and just start racing. We'll see how many more enchantments I can string together. So what am I going to do against that? I think I'm going to discard Return to Nature. And also the Binding of Titans. Yeah. Threnody Singer is looking pretty good here. I suppose my opponent will... Yeah. They're going to attack here. I'm going to have to take it. My opponent has Final Death in their graveyard, so... That's good. And I'll be able to flash in both of my creatures, double block the Hierophant, and I feel like that should work. Yeah, there's really no way that that goes wrong. Unless my opponent has... Yeah, there's just not a way it goes wrong. I'm going to have 4 Devotion to blue. Opponent only has a single blue in play. They don't have Memory Drain up. So we're going to get to block. Let's see if we get to go to damage. If I get to go to damage, I'm feeling pretty good here. Or even if my opponent uses a removal spell to kill one of these subpar creatures, I'm feeling okay. It looks like they're maxing out to gain more life again. Thaumaturge should be decent. So I'm not exactly killing my opponent super fast right now. But I'm not in too much trouble myself being at 16, and at any point I can start leaving back one of my 3 power creatures to trade with the Hierophant. Right now I'm happy to trade the Chimera with it. So at this point my opponent's lacking some card advantage. There's a 5/6. We'll see if that's going to be good enough. I'm gonna get to scry here, the end of my opponent's turn, trying to find pretty much any enchantment is gonna be good. I'll trigger both of my constellations. I can make another flyer, so that'll be good. Now my opponent has access to double blue, so decent chance that they've been holding Memory Drain in their hand, unable to cast it for the length of this game. I do feel like I'm winning the race by a little bit right now. But let's say my opponent counters my next spell. Not feeling amazing. Omen of the Sea is looking pretty good here. They'll be able to set up their turns for the rest of the game pretty much. The game's not going to go too much longer. They've put 2 cards on the bottom. They have another 3/3 Death Touch. My flyers are making that card look pretty bad right now. And my opponent still has no escape cards in their graveyard. So pretty big draw step here. Setessan Training, yeah, that card looks amazing right now. So I'll just diversify my threats and just put it on the Threnody Singer. Let's see. Okay, let's maybe think a little bit deeper. I haven't seen a ton of removal in my opponent's deck, so let's not diversify it. Let's just put it on the Witness of Tomorrows. This way, I have the option to leave the Threnody Singer back and chump with it. Decent chance I need to use a chump blocker in this game at some point. So this is gonna give me 4 power, 7, 8, 11. This is gonna give me 11 power. So I will be able to attack and force my opponent to sacrifice a creature to stay alive. 7, 8, yeah. So if I do that, let's say they sack the Lampad, they'll be at 1. I'll go to 10. Then they will attack me. I don't love that line of play, actually. Actually, okay, hold on. What if I copy their Lampad? Then I attack them for 7, 8, and then sacrifice 4. That is lethal. So let's do it that way. My opponent has 1 black mana. Yeah, I don't think there's anything in the format. Actually, wow, there is a certain card in the format that could win through this. Pretty sick spot here. So now I have an alternative line of Ichthyomorphosis on Lampad, making it lose its abilities, and they would have to sacrifice in response. Let's see. This is a really funny spot. I kind of feel like I cannot lose this game, so I don't want to leave myself dead to that one instant that exiles a card from a graveyard, although it is a creature. What's the card? Yeah, my opponent can have Cling to Dust, and then I would be dead. So I feel like they probably don't have it, but how do I lose this game otherwise? I don't know. I probably can't lose the game otherwise. So I can Ichthyomorphosis their Brine Giant. That's going to be pretty good. Yeah, I think this is the better play. I'm being pretty annoying playing using this line right now. Just given my opponent's like almost assuredly dead, but I'm taking forever. So sorry, Anders. Very sorry. I feel like this was better to play around Cling to Dust. Kind of feel like my opponent can't deal 10 to me here. And then it's going to be really hard for them to get past. I have 2 lethal flyers and another lethal maybe flyer. It's possible I can scry on my upkeep as well. Just to try to, it's probably shouldn't do it. Okay, so we got a 2-1 with this deck. I mean, I felt pretty bad just getting wrecked in that first round, but pretty like average deck, I would say. So thank you guys for watching, and see you next time.